ultimate melee weapon, the War Scythe?
Yes. Now, the War Scythe is very similar to the phase blades used by the Imperium. War Scythes are used by Necron Overlords, Lords, Lichguard, and Pariahs. Now, the Pariah version of the War Scythe actually has a Gorse Blaster built into it, and a well-directed attack from the War Scythe can actually take the end off a Leman Russ battle tank or scythe open the end of a bunker. A weird side effect of the War Scythe's powerful is actually renders the weapon almost impossible to destroy. There's been documented cases of War Scythes surviving direct hits from las cannons with little harm to show for it. However, this protection does not extend to the wielder. So it's quite common for a War Scythe to survive a battle where its wielder doesn't.
Let me go over this first. Quote, living metal. To clarify, metal is never truly alive in any sense. It's just a metal plate. And this is not a metal plate that is living or self-repairing. Instead, what I would theorize is that it is a solid metal plate containing hundreds of nanites and nanomachines that cover the plates and replace and just repair the metal as it's destroyed. That much said, the War Scythe is in fact continuously taking damage as it is swung, yet it is fixing itself to the state of a reaping blade, removing the disadvantage of the reaping blade not being as sharp as soon as you swing it. All of this theory also phases into the idea that the living metal can in fact function in spite of any lore to say how it works, because in order for non-living metal to fix itself, it would have to have something else integrated into that armor to give it active sentience, which in my opinion is nanites. As to how I managed to analyze how the War Scythe works, it works very similar to the War Scythe and the War Scythe blade and the hyperspace sword. It simply phases into and displaces. The difference here is that even if it displaces into something harder than itself, it is going to be able to self-repair using the living metal it's made out of, i.e. the nanites will take whatever material is available to transform the blade back into its original state.
Okay, so next up we'll be looking back at ranged weaponry. We're going to be looking at the Thermal Cutting Beam. Now, the Thermal Cutting Beam is an extremely powerful weapon, most commonly used by Canoptek Acanthronites. I hope I pronounced it right. No, Acanthrites, sorry. My apologies. These weapons allow its wielder to carve and disassemble solid matter with horrifying speed. The keyword disassemble.
Alright, so, Thermal Cutting Beam. Sounds really simple, doesn't it? Try again! Another term for this one is Plasma Torch, or Plasma Beam, to describe what exactly that means. Plasma is what stars are made of. We currently can create what is referred to as a plasma torch, which is a torch that creates a plasma using hydrogen in order to superheat and weld. But also such technology could be extended to create a plasma beam, should you be able to contain it and keep it in a straight line. Such a beam would have roughly 1/2 the temperature of the sun.
That's pretty hot.
Would be focused using a magnetic field around it in order to keep it from dissipating, similar to what the plasma gun uses, as discussed in the Imperial Guard episode, or as discussed with the Tau pulse rifle. You could create a continuous plasma beam of death that would allow you to superheat itself hotter the longer it fires, as it heats up the air around it. Meaning that you are in fact attempting to create a miniature sunbeam. The most dense and toughest metal would be easily cuttable with a thermal cutting beam, quote, since we know for a fact that one of the few things that can actually cut tungsten steel alloy, as I mentioned before in the episode, is a plasma torch. The Necrons would likely be able to slice through anything in their path. What becomes more of a question is, when does it stop? You know, like, how many space marines does it take to stop the thermal cutting beam? Or how many Predator tanks does it go through and create a Predator tank sunbeam shish kebab?
No idea.
The weapon is a mountain. Could stop this, maybe, but then again, you may just fire it and carve through the entire mountain. And I would go further to theorize that all the Necron tunnels were actually created using this technology.
How does this weapon stack up with other plasma-based weaponry we've looked at so far?
Other plasma-based weaponry fires in a burst. The burst, once it's completely expelled, dissipates upon impact. This weapon so long as you fire the beam, keeps cutting. So that means that if you hit the target and don't initially penetrate in the first half second, it's going to keep cutting into the target until the target either gets out of the way or is completely sliced through end to end. Unlike the other plasma weapons we've covered, which once you fire them, they have to recharge for a certain period, this one doesn't. It just keeps going and going and going. Oh my god, we have the Energizer Bunny of plasma weapons.
Energizer beam, if you will. Speaking of beams, the particle beamer. Now, these weapons emit a stream of tiny antimatter particles that detonate upon contact with other matter, blasting it to bits, and require only enough energy to maintain its containment field, which prevents the antimatter from detonating within the weapon itself.
Antimatter is supposedly the theoretical counter to matter. A theoretical idea that antimatter meets normal matter, they detonate on contact, both cease to exist. What really happens here is there's no explosion. Just the cessation, and the cessation of existence is a total myth. Theoretically, what you have when antimatter and matter meet is you have the heat death of both particles, resulting in a combination of energy equals mc squared, so that the total mass of the matter that is impacted into the antimatter is immediately converted to energy. There's no real flashy, heavy math here, guys. It's literally just how much antimatter did you put into what you shot. That's how many kilograms of matter that has now been converted into heat. Shouldn't actually just be an explosion. The flash you see is the destruction of the matter itself. But the destruction of the matter itself, unless you're talking about ammunition cooking off and exploding, which is highly unlikely since it's just being converted to energy, and there's no actual chemical reaction that would cause a explosion, would be completely silent.
Oh.
Since that is how matter and antimatter are theorized to interact, it's literally the equivalent of, can you hear the heat your heater puts off? Can you see it and feel it? Yes. Can you hear it? No.
Moving on then, we're looking at the Transdimensional Beamer. Now, the Transdimensional Beamer is capable of shifting material, metal or organic alike, into another dimension. So it's, I suppose you could call it some kind of weird teleport gun, I would assume similar to like the distortion cannon from the Eldar. I would assume.
Okay. So this weapon in lore states it teleports the foe into extra-dimensional space where they die alone from starvation and insanity. Pause. Full stop. This is universe changing. What this means is the Necrons not only have access to the warp, but have access to other dimensions well beyond just the warp. This means the 40K universe exists in a multiverse theory, no matter how you want to look at it, and the Necrons are the only ones who have not only figured this out, but have access to all the other dimensions they can fathom. Forget the fact that this weapon teleports you somewhere, but understand that this now makes the Necrons actually the scariest beings in the entirety of the Warhammer 40K universe. Because they may not even be native to the Warhammer 40K universe. In addition to this, it implies the Necrons have infinite resources from different universes and presents a whole new set of theories to be investigated as to how the Necrons acquired such technology, as well as how they exploit it to gain something beyond just teleporting their foes into the abyss. You want to know where living metal comes from? It's probably not native to the Imperium's universe itself. How would they also be sending someone to an abyss? What actually lurks there? What entities are they secretly feeding people when they teleport them there?
They're probably sending them to the Reconium where Malau lives, along with the squats.
This is the harsh insanity that is the Transdimensional Beamer, and what truly makes the Necrons terrifying.
That is actually pretty damn scary.
something that we should all probably be asking. Where did the Necrons really come from?
Again, as far as we're aware, they evolved on some back-forsaken world near a radiation high-producing star. But again, if they had all that technology, why didn't they just move to another planet? You have to wonder, don't you?
Good question.
So moving on, we're going to look at the Synaptic Disintegrator. Now, this is a long-range weapon, which is most commonly used by deathmark snipers. It is a rifle that fires a compressed leptonic beam that destroys synaptic tissue.
Let me begin by saying that leptons are quarks, a theoretical particle that we are not even sure exists inside of electrons that are one of 16 theoretical components that make up an electron. Let me go further by saying that you can bombard your enemies with electrons all you would like. It will have no effect on them whatsoever in most cases. Even at hypersonic speeds, without protons and neutrons, electrons have no mass. In addition to this, they would not interact in the way in which it says it would with our bodies. Our nervous systems are actually quite resilient. You can, in fact, in the case of the electrons being smashed into little quarks, stand inside the effect of electrons smashing into each other and be perfectly fine. Considering that our body is made up of various compounds, of multiple different atoms and molecules combined together to create said compounds, such as water, or nitrogen hydrogen oxides, or carbon dioxide, these compounds are incredibly stable. Shooting us with electrons would have no effect on our brain whatsoever, much less shooting us with a quark that supposedly makes up said electrons would have zero effect upon our nervous system or nervous activity, since our nervous system is reliant on chemical reactions as well as electrical reactions. It would be, in fact, like walking into hydrogen gas that is charged with electrons. It would not actually have any adverse effect on your brain. I mean, yeah, you can't breathe hydrogen gas charged with electrons, but as soon as you're able to breathe, you're perfectly fine with no foreseeable damage. This weapon is complete and utter sci-fi, total bollocks, and doesn't work in any form, shape, or way, considering Newtonian physics, molecular physics, or theoretical quark physics.
So I think we've succeeded in finding the most absolutely useless sniper rifle in existence.
This thing literally just, no, doesn't work, shouldn't work, can't exist.
Fair enough. And moving on to the final weapon of this episode, we're going to take a look at the Tachyon Arrow. Now, Tachyon Arrows are wrist-mounted energy weapons that, when activated, transmutes a sliver of inert metal into an unstoppable thunderbolt capable of piercing a mountain.
Okay, I'm going to explain how this weapon can pierce a mountain. Based upon several assumptions that had to be made, the weapon is likely made of tungsten steel alloy, similar to what the Necrons are theorized to be made of by the Imperium, minus the nanomachines. Using this, we know that the weapon cannot fire an element more dense than tungsten, because it would overload from the pressure and heat needed to cause the weapon to fire its plasma bolt of death. Furthermore, the weapon has to be something more dense than iron, the most common element that mountains are actually made of, to penetrate the mountain without actually flinching upon impact. Managing to run over all the elements that are between the densities of iron and tungsten, the only truly real option to use is cadmium. This metal has a melting point of 321 degrees Celsius and boils at 776 degrees Celsius. If we apply twice Earth's pressure to it, which is we are more than capable of doing, we can cause the cadmium to achieve a plasma point of 2173 degrees centigrade, and further superheat it to the melting point of tungsten, 3422 degrees. If we then alloy the tungsten with iron and steel, we can get the melting point of the tungsten alloy all the way up to 5,281 degrees, and therefore increase the cadmium's total temperature upon discharge to 4,346 degrees, i.e. the normal temperature it would plasmify at Earth atmosphere pressure of 1.0. Using a magnetic field theory discussed again in the Tau and Imperium episodes, this weapon could then fire at a range of up to 30 meters and still be able to penetrate and bore its way all the way to the center of Mount Everest, roughly 1.7 kilometers from the base of the mountain.
Well, shit.
It would superheat and cause the boiling point of the iron granite the mountain is made of, and stop just 130 meters short of penetrating the tallest mountain on Earth from one side to the other at the base of the mountain. The problem with this weapon is the time it takes to create the reaction. Yes, I can shove a sliver of cadmium into it and begin the reaction at any point in time. As a matter of fact, you would only need 0.8 grams of cadmium metal in order to create the plasma, because metals expand at roughly a rate of 2 the 10th their actual original size when they become plasma, in order to bore a hole into the mountain the size of a human fist. However, using all of this theory crafting, it would take roughly 2 hours to heat and pressurize the cadmium to achieve the bolt described in lore. Even with advanced technology that the Necrons possessed, you would still have close to 10 minutes between shots. Don't miss. You won't get another round.
Not too bad for a little wrist-mounted weapon, is it?
Not at all! And I actually used the dimensions of the weapon to theorize how to make it happen with our own real-world technology.
Fair enough, then.
I should totally have been a theoretical physicist. I missed my calling, everyone!
You really did. So, overall, how do the Necrons' weaponry hold up against other races?
Some of it appears to be a little bit copycat, like the Tesla carbine. I'm going to say that flat out. Some of it is just a little bit copycat. Other pieces of it are by far super advanced and absolutely terrifying, and one bit of it is completely useless. The Tachyon Arrow and the Transdimensional Beamer are by far the scariest pieces of technology I've ever seen. Because
even more so than the Hellgun.
The Tachyon Arrow doesn't quite pack the destructive capability of the Hellgun nor the rate of fire, but the Transdimensional Beamer creates a whole new world of possibility that the Necrons are in fact something that we don't even truly understand nor never will. It also implies that there are more places to go in the Warhammer 40K universe besides just the warp and the materium, and the Imperium simply hasn't figured out how to do it yet.
Which opens up a whole new realm of possibilities.
Terrifying possibilities. Insanely scary possibilities.
So that pretty much ramps up for this edition of Men at Arms. Join us again next time where we'll be taking a look at the weapons of the Dark Eldar, which should be pretty interesting. So anyway, this has been Remnants from 40K Theories.
And this has been Fiaura over from my channel.
And we'll see you all again next time. Bye-bye.